Hello and welcome to OBS Obsessed, the show all about OBS Studio. Today on the show, I'm going to talk to you about VinciFlow, which is sort of a plugin for OBS Studio that will help us create lower thirds in a way that I thought was really interesting, and I thought we'd check that out today. We are going out live to all the various places though, so if you are watching live, say hello in the chat. I'd love to hear from you. Also, I have to press this magical button. For the best experience, head over to johnlacey.com/live, and you'll see that we have that little push to 900 subs animation appear on the screen, which I created in last week's stream. The exciting thing is I've reached that goal, so I'm now sitting on 903, I think, subscribers on YouTube, and I'm going to have to update that animation, which is an exciting thing, and it did actually coincide with my birthday on Wednesday, so that was really, really cool. So thank you to everybody who's supported the channel over the years. I really appreciate it, but let's get stuck in. Let's head over to obsproject.com. This is the website where you download OBS Studio from, and I'm in the forums and checking out the plugins. So this is VinciFlow, which was formerly Smart Lower Thirds. And I saw that this had been updated as recently as yesterday, so I thought this would be a good one to check out. And I guess the thing about this specifically is, having used other pieces of live streaming software, a really easy thing to do in things like StreamYard and Restream Studio is just really spin up a lower third really quickly and easily. And it's not to say that you can't do similar things in OBS, but you do need to sort of think about, you know, having text sources, having images, creating your own banners and things in other pieces of software and bringing them into OBS Studio. So I thought we'd check out this one. There are a number of different lower third plugins out there. I haven't tested them all, but I thought we'd give this one a go. So let's head over to my portable version of OBS. So once you've installed this, and I should say too, if we go back for a second, you can go to the download. It essentially, I think this will take you to the download page here. You can also check out the information on GitHub, I think. Yep. So you can download this as a Windows installer or for, I think, Mac and Linux as well. And if you download the installer, you can just run it. If you download one of the zip files, you probably do need to copy those files over to your OBS installation. But once we've got that going, we'll go back to OBS. You should have a new dock. So if you go to your docs menu and just find VinciFlow controller, and this is kind of where all the magic happens. There is a couple of things you need to do first. First of all is you have to specify a resources folder. And this is just any folder on your computer that this software can actually write to, because it's going to record all the information about your lower thirds. So literally just create a new folder on your computer somewhere. As long as the software can write to it, you're good to go. And in this case, because I'm running this portable version of OBS, I've actually just thrown a folder in here called VinciFlow Resources. The second thing we need to do is actually specify a browser source. So we need to come down and create a new browser source. In fact, I'm going to just close out some of the vertical things here because you don't need to see those. We're not going to use those today, but essentially if we go and add a new browser source, and I'll call this VinciFlow, and click OK. What we probably want to do is change this to 1920 by 1080. And I'm going to say local file, but I am going to leave that sort of blank. And go OK. You'll see there's nothing actually happening in here just yet, although it looks like it has actually defaulted to VinciFlow. And I guess that's something else to keep in mind, is that this dialog box will work for all of your scene collections. So if you do want to use these lower thirds in a number of different scene collections, I'd probably be inclined to leave the browser source with the same name in each of those. So we've got that there. That's really all you need to do to get started, but then we want to actually create some lower thirds. So just again, in the VinciFlow controller, add this plus sign to create a new one. It'll call it new lower third, subtitle. And if we click on this edit button, this is kind of where all the magic happens. So we've got the label. So this is the text that'll actually appear in this list. So if I want to say, I'll just call it JL Live. And this, then we've got the title and the subtitle. So what this actually looks like. So I will say, we might call this Watch Live, and I'll go, the subtitle can be johnlacey.com/live. You can actually specify a profile picture. You can include animation, sort of sounds. So animating in and out, animating out. And we can actually create a hotkey. This is really awesome. And I think we'll come back to that in a second. So from here, if I just save and apply, and I click on this from the list, you'll see it says Watch Live, johnlacey.com/live, which is pretty good, but we might want to change how that looks. So let's go in and edit that again. We've got the style and animation. So we've got animation styles, we've got fades, we've got backing in and bouncing in, zooming in, all kinds of things. We have Jack in the Box. I don't even know what Jack in the Box is, but I think we should find out together. So let's just save and apply. Oh, there we go. That's actually really fun. And that's just animated in a really nice and elegant way. So you probably want to spend a little bit more time than I have today actually going through some of these different options. Rubber band might be fun. Oh, okay. So that sort of explodes onto the screen and stretches out a little bit. That's really fun. I like that. All right. So we have all our different animation styles. We've got those for in and out as well. We've got our font. So I want to go in and maybe for my personal streaming things, I like to use a lot of Open Sans. So I'll change that. And then we have our subtitle sizes in pixels. So at the moment, the subtitle is 24 and the title itself is 46. I could come in and change this. So I could make this maybe 48 and 68. We also have the avatar height, so the width and height. So again, if you specified a profile picture here, we could actually override that to have it display however it needs to display. We've got the opacity and we've got the radius. So 5 units is what it defaulted to. I probably need to actually save that to see what that looks like. So I went to 100. That's not great because it is sort of cutting off some of the text. But just to give you a sense of what that looks like, let's go down to 5. I think that was pretty good. And I imagine if you go down to 0, it'll just be rectangular. Which again, depending on what you want, might be really, really useful. So we've got that there. And again, we can see that I've just made the font sizes a little bit larger here, which I think is really good. Then if we go to the color tab, we have our color options. So again, I always think it's a good idea to think about color contrast. So having a light color on a dark background, and it's done a pretty good job here with sort of this gray and black combination. So we've got the primary color, we've got the secondary color, we've got the title color and the subtitle color. So I could even, I'm going to make this properly black, and we'll just see that might be a little bit too intense. It really isn't that dark, and I suspect there's probably some transparency or opacity stuff happening. So the primary color. I guess the other thing too is this is all built on sort of JavaScript and HTML and CSS, and we'll actually have a close look at that in a second. But again, if we wanted to try out some different colors, and again, this is the standard OBS Studio color picker. So we have hue, saturation, and value. We've got our RGB, red, green, blue, and we've also got the HTML hex colors. So if you do have branding colors from your project that you want to use, you can always bring those in. If I save and apply that there. Interestingly, the great thing about changing that to the gray is that I can see that the primary color and the secondary color are used here to actually have a bit of a gradient. So what I could do potentially is if I maybe, I'm not really sure which green I picked, but let's just imagine it's that one. I'll go back to my primary color. That seems to be the gradient that's coming in from the left. Maybe we make this a little bit darker and go save and apply. And you'll see that we've got the darker color here and the lighter color there. So again, these are just creative choices I'm making up on the spot. You'd probably want to spend a little bit more time thinking about this. But we've got the title color and the subtitle color. Again, I don't know. It's probably going to look horrendous, but I'm going to pick this maroon purpley color. And in that case, it doesn't seem to have made a difference anywhere. So the subtitle color doesn't seem to be using that. That's interesting. How about we change the title color? And again, these aren't great creative choices. I'm just picking randomly. Yeah, so for this particular version, it seems to only be using the title color for everything. So again, there are sort of other options, and I've actually managed to open that dialog box twice, which is interesting. But let's just go back to black and white or dark, I suppose, just for this example. And again, that's just that gradient. So I will just pick I guess dark black to gray. See what that looks like. All right, I think that works pretty well. So let's go back into edit our settings. Again, we've got our layout. So this is where it gets really granular, and this is kind of wonderful if you're a web designer / developer. You can get really, really nerdy. It does actually have a whole bunch of template placeholders. So if you want to grab specific text from the content and media tab, you can sort of reference that here with these little variables. You can bring all that in. You can literally just edit the HTML and CSS and JavaScript in here. If you know what you're doing, you can do that. If you don't know what you're doing, I wouldn't dwell on that too much. But the other thing that's really interesting about this is there's actually a templates gallery. So you can actually go and either get some free templates, or you can actually pay for some templates. And again, there's just a handful of them. They look pretty good. The sports cards. Tell me more about that. I kind of forget that I'm in a different scene collection. I have to press different buttons to make things work. But hello, Business Growth Ready. Great to have your company today. So we have all these different things, and again, a lot of these are free. Some of them you do need to pay for. And basically, how this works is that the creator has a Ko-fi or Coffee page, and in fact, you'll see a little ad for it over here. Buy me a Ko-fi coffee. You can do that, but essentially, all that really happens here is you download a zip file. And then if you go to, in fact, you don't need to be on any special ones of these. I can go import, and I can just find the zip file that I downloaded earlier. And you're literally just opening this zip file in this context. And assuming that worked, if I go save and apply, no. Okay, all right, cool. So I needed to give that a few more seconds, but now if I go save and apply, you'll see that we've got the new lower third. The slightly annoying thing about this is it does actually revert to default settings for the text. So I've got to sort of come back in here and replace the title and the subtitle. So I could go maybe johnlacey.com/live. I could change the image here, and we've got that there. And in fact, I've literally kind of done this up here with an earlier example, so I can go johnlacey.com/live. One thing I did find a little annoying about this particular template is that I have specified a font for this, which is again Open Sans, and the title references that. The subtitle seems to just pick whatever it wants. Actually, I think I actually overrid that in the CSS. I think I actually did something in here, which may or may not be a good idea. But anyway, the important thing here is that we have these. So one of the really great things about this is once you've got your lower third the way you want it, we can actually just clone it, and it'll call it a copy. We can go in and edit this. So maybe I can say newsletter. Save and apply. in this case, and it is really interesting because we're sort of seeing our two colors being represented here. So if I go to the color options, okay. That is really interesting because I think it's just because the text there is so long. In fact, if I go in and change that just to newsletter, which is not the OBS newsletter, but it's the other one. Oh, okay. This is an interesting thing that I've done here. I've managed to actually select both of these at the same time. So you're actually seeing the one underneath it, which is annoying. I didn't think that was going to happen. I kind of assumed there'd just be one of these. But again, that might be a bit of a gotcha. But the other thing that's really nice about this is if we go into edit our lower third, again, in the content and media section, we do have a hotkey option for individual lower thirds. So if I wanted to go Control-Shift-9, for example, save and apply, and if I do that on my keyboard, that'll trigger that particular one. Okay, cool. So, Business Growth Ready writes, haven't played with it, but I heard that you can use your Stream Deck to update the scores if you were using the lower thirds for Team A and Team B, etc. Yeah. I mean, that's a really good segue, actually. So, what I'm going to do, and I think I've got it open here. So, I'm going to drag my Stream Deck software over here where you can see it. And I want to show you something which is really cool, and I must admit I learnt this from Saeed Sadouk, who has been on the show a few times. Hotkey. Let's grab a hotkey. I'm gonna drag it onto an empty spot here. I'm just gonna call it news for the moment because that's basically what I want to do. We can actually use this to do a specific action. I'm not going to worry about that right now. What I am going to do though, is down here where it says hotkey to assign, I could click in here and just press buttons on my keyboard, which again is a useful thing to do. But if you click on this this little drop down, you'll get a whole bunch of other options as well. And here I've got the function keys F1 to F24. I'm just checking my keyboard. My keyboard only goes to F12. So anything after F12 is something I physically can't press on my keyboard, but it is reserved within Windows for me to do this. And if you want to make it even more elaborate, we can go Control Shift, and then maybe if I select Control Shift 24, I can be pretty confident that nothing on my computer is using Control Shift 24. Because it's basically impossible for me to actually reference that. But now, if I go back into my newsletter, if I click in here, and instead of trying to press something on my keyboard, I'm going to press that button on my Stream Deck, and it'll actually reference that. So now I've got a keyboard shortcut that doesn't really... It isn't constrained by any other piece of software on my computer as far as I know. And I don't need to remember what that is. And I think that's often a challenge with keyboard shortcuts, is if you don't memorize them all, they're really hard to know. But I have this physical button on my Stream Deck now where I can press this, the newsletter thing will pop up, I can press it a second time, and it will go away. So that's really, really, really cool. Just to give you a sense, and I kind of alluded to this, but let me actually show you. I must admit, I'm not really familiar with this creator, MML Tech, but they're obviously responsible for a whole bunch of different things. And I think this is actually what Business Growth Ready was alluding to, and I didn't quite connect in my brain. But we do have, I think this person does actually have some sort of scoreboard overlay as well, but there's nothing coming up for me there. But the great thing about this, and this is Ko-Fi, the Ko-Fi page, there are some of these that you do have to pay for, and then some are free. So lower third, I think that might have even been the one that I've been demonstrating with. Let's just see if we've got another one. Let's just grab this, and I'll say you do need to specify how much you want to pay for it. I'm feeling a little cheap today, so I'm going to go 0. All right, cool. And I do kind of need to put in my email address and my display name, so I might just take my screen capture off so I can do that really quickly. And I will check that out. All right, and I will go to view content, and then I will download this zip file. All right, let's go back to OBS. Okay, so now, and I might even just duplicate this one. And I'm gonna just change that. So again, all we need to do is import this. And again, I'm just gonna grab that on another screen. It'll say template imported successfully. Click save and apply to rebuild files. I'm gonna go okay. Again, it has sort of replaced the title and subtitle. The other thing about this too, I think I should really make this obvious in case it isn't. We do have an export option. So if you make your subtitle look really fancy and you want to share it with friends or other creators, you can definitely export this and it'll do that. But let's just go newsletter. Let's go johnlacey.com/news and click save and apply. And again, it is interesting that I can trigger more of these, more than one at a time. And in this case, I don't really love that one, but it is interesting. And I just wanted to show you conceptually how that worked. So it's really just a matter of bringing those in. But let's go back to, and I'm kind of, it would be really interesting to know, and I probably can't find an answer for this right now, but it would be really great if, and maybe this is a recommendation for the developer, just say, you know, can we just trigger one at a time? Because unless people have a use case for that, which they might. So I don't know. Maybe I just need to be a little bit careful that I actually turn these off before I go to the next one. But let's just explore some of these other options and features. Custom handled in, custom handled out. That's really interesting. So that's actually an option here. I'm going to play with some of these because I just think it'll be really fun. So I'm going to try heartbeat in and heartbeat out. In fact, let's go heartbeat in and hinge out. And we'll save and apply. And I will trigger that. And I might have broken something because it's not responding. All right. Okay, let's try different animations then. So maybe rubber bands and flip out X. That is really interesting, and I wonder if it's because I had actually applied that template. So I guess, you know, I really am trying this out really for the first time today, and it's obviously not perfect, and maybe there are some other settings in here I need to investigate. But what I might do, let's ignore this and let's just create another one from scratch. And we'll just go newsletter, johnlacey.com/news. And let's try some of these other animations. And again, this is the kind of thing that me with the, I don't know, I'm a bit of a child. I love playing with with all these different things. And again, you probably want to get this out of your system and then come back at another time and just think about what's actually going to work for your stream. It looks like some of these, so heartbeat is, it looks like heartbeat's own, unless I'm, looks like heartbeat may only be for animating in. But anyway, let's try this. Heartbeat, animation in, and then animation out is zoom out down. Okay. Turn that off. So it's sort of, it just basically pulsates in, and then when I press it off, it becomes smaller and then just falls off the screen. It's kind of fun. What else have we got? Wobble in, and let's bounce out, down. See what that looks like. I do actually really enjoy the animations. And again, it might just be because I'm a literal child, but it is what it is. So we've got that there. The other thing I think that's probably worth exploring, I haven't really done a lot of this just yet, but if I go into edit the lower third, no. There is something in here that I saw earlier, and I might need to just backtrack a little. In fact, here we go. So manage groups. So again, if you have a number of different lower thirds, it may be worthwhile to actually think about some groups here. So I can add a new group, and I will call this, I'll call this OBS Obsessed. We can just imagine these are lower thirds that relate to this show. We can adjust the order, and then we can sort of select which one of these need to go in this group. So in this case, I'm just going to imagine it'll be this one and this one. Again, this is the point at which it really is beneficial to have named these well, because otherwise you don't really know what you're applying. Okay, we've got that there. So we do have start and stop. I'm curious what that does. So if I start, apply. I genuinely thought this would organize these differently, but I don't think it's going to. I'm curious what that feature is for. Manage groups. So visible duration, 5 seconds. So I'm imagining this is actually, like, theoretically it should play these in a specific order. So what I probably need to do, I'll get rid of the newsletter one because I think that's the one that's actually broken. We'll go with the lower third. Visible duration, time between, dock highlight color, loop group. Okay, I'll turn the loop group off. And I had the weirdest feeling there was an option for a keyboard shortcut in here previously, but I'm not seeing it actually. Oh, up here, toggle hotkey. So again, if I just go Control-Shift-0, is that doing anything? Doesn't look like it's doing anything. Okay, Control-Shift-8. So now if I apply that, and I go Control-Shift-8, it should show these, and hopefully it'll show the second one as well. I'm not really sure how long of the time duration I actually put on these. I guess we'll find out in a moment. There we go. So the first one disappears. There's a gap of time, and then the second one comes in here. So again, if you do just have a few calls to action that you want to have flush up on the screen, that seems to be a way of doing that, which is really interesting. And it was not what I was actually expecting the grouping feature would do, but that is really cool. And again, we have the ability to group that. So maybe, you know, maybe I actually have something that has a visible duration, and then at some point I go, actually, this is in seconds, so I'd have to do a bit of math, but maybe I want 5 minutes between each of these, and maybe they just flash on the side. Maybe this is just letting people know what social media platforms you're on, or different calls to action. Maybe this flashes up randomly. And I really like this actually as an idea, because often you'll be too busy talking about the stream to be able to press all the magical buttons and do all the different things. So it's a really interesting idea. I do like the fact that it actually highlights these in green. I guess probably what I would be inclined to do though is like physically move these up together. Because I think that's what's going to be really interesting is at some point, if you're doing a number of different shows, you probably want these to be specific. Like, even if you don't have these animate onto the screen, maybe you just want to group them by color and put them in the order so you know which ones relate to this. Because I guess the thing that may not be clear is if I go and create a new scene collection, and we'll say VinciFlow 2, we still have all the same lower thirds here. This actually persists regardless of which scene collection you're in. What you will need to do though is actually recreate that browser source. So again, if I add my browser source and I'll call it VinciFlow, make it local 1920 by 1080. I don't know that I need to make it that, and you'll see that the minute there is a browser source here, it'll sort of guess which one it is. If you've just created a browser source and you don't see it in this list, there is actually a refresh option just here, so it'll refresh the list. And you can sort of, in fact, I haven't really need to adjust that. Presumably it's coming from the source itself. I'm not really sure why browser sources default to that size. It seems like a weird choice to be 800 by 600, but there's probably some historical reason for that. We don't need to dwell on it. It's fine. All right, so we've got those. Let's go actually back to this one. So as much as I like the idea of this, I'm finding that it isn't, like, it is a little buggy. So let's go back to our earlier scene collection. Hopefully this won't break anything and all those things I've selected come back on. So that works there, but it doesn't work here. I wonder why that is. So maybe you do actually need to build these in the particular scene collection you're going to be working in. And if that is the case, I kind of wonder why these aren't sort of scene specific, like scene collection specific. Because potentially if I'm in a different section, like in a different scene collection, I might be triggering those and they may not be working, which is really weird. I don't know. I mean, one of the things that I did do when I installed this was I have actually joined this person's Discord. So maybe that's something I can ask about. Because it doesn't seem to work outside of here. And again, if I create a new one, I'm thinking, so second scene collection. Doesn't really matter what it looks like, but I can trigger that here. If I go back to the other one, that's interesting. Okay, so maybe I did that too quickly, but it's telling me that some files are missing since you last used OBS Studio. And it does seem to relate to that specifically. So what I'm thinking is what I might need to actually do is if I go back to here, I'm going to change the name of this browser source, and I will call this, I'll call it VinciFlow 20. I will go back to this one. I'm just going to say apply. I don't know what the deal is with that. I'm going to rename this and we'll call this one 10. We'll reselect this. And now bring those in. And they did work previously. If I go back to VinciFlow 2, there's definitely a problem there. It's very annoying. But again, okay, it's forgotten the browser source. So if I specify the browser source here, then they work again. So Interestingly, my inclination was to make the browser source the same name everywhere, but I think you definitely need to do that differently. But let's just go back to the earlier one, and it's doing it each time, which is very annoying. Very, very annoying. If I... And again, I'll have to specify that again. So I love the idea of this. I don't know how well it's going to work, and I'm kind of grateful that I did install this on a portable version just to have a bit of a play with. Business Growth Ready writes, if you've got auto playing, it would be nice that it follows rules that it wouldn't display if you're on a certain screen or a certain scene and the clock is paused until you move off that scene. Yeah, and you're probably getting into sort of advanced scene switcher territory, which is something my former co-host Samproof uses a lot, but I never really went there. So this is interesting, and I must admit, like, this plugin was updated as recently as yesterday, so it probably is a work in progress. I might be judging it a little bit prematurely, but I thought it was sort of interesting that it had these options. And again, so it was released yesterday afternoon, 2:30. I'm actually kind of curious when I installed this yesterday, because it might have been a little bit earlier in the day than that. All right, what I might do, let's just go back to here. Don't forget to like and subscribe, by the way. That would be a really awesome thing to do. If I look, I'm going to download this again. Actually, I kind of accidentally downloaded this earlier this morning. So what I might do, and again, this might be a disaster. I'm going to close my portable version of OBS Studio. I'm going to find that file that I downloaded earlier today. Okay. All right. So yeah, I did download that yesterday. I'm curious if it'll tell me when I downloaded that. 9 a.m. Okay. So there's a really good chance this has actually been updated since I've done this. So I'm just gonna download it again. Let's just see if it's gonna make a difference. It's always joyful doing these things in real time on a live stream, but it is what it is. I hope you're having a good January. I had a very good week this week. Obviously, it was my birthday. That was a lot of fun on Wednesday, and I did reach my 900 subscriber mark on YouTube, so that was exciting. Okay, so I'm going to download the Windows 64 Setup EXE. And I am going to try and install this. This might be where this gets a little bit weird, because I suspect the minute I try to install this, Windows admin will intervene and hopefully the stream will still be here. Fingers crossed. Okay, so I think we're still here. Awesome. And I just want to actually specify that I am installing this in my portable version. So I'm just going to find that on another screen. Okay, successfully done. Let's go and open the portable version again. I feel like I need some dramatic music while this is all happening, but I don't have any queued up. All right. Give this a second to load. There we go. All right, let's go back to here. So again, I've installed this again. So we'll go back to OBS. So this is where we were before. Still got my things that are there, which is nice. If I go to the other scene, I'm still getting that error, but I will say cancel. And I will just specify this again here. Okay, so it does work. It's a little bit glitchy. I don't... but it's probably work in progress, so we won't judge it too harshly. Hello to Ernesto. Thanks for joining us today. We're just checking out a plugin for OBS Studio called VinciFlow Controller. It creates lower thirds, and it does some really cool stuff. It works reasonably well. We are finding some glitchy things when I do move between scene collections, which might be a bit of a problem. If I press this one now, I guess the thing to note is that when I do move between different scene collections, it can't find the file, and I'm assuming that's probably because it's a temporary file, and I just go cancel, and then I just specify my browser source again. So kind of annoying, but not disastrous, as long as you keep in mind that this is a step that you might need to actually do before you go live. And the great thing about this is that we have all these options, so we can make this look and feel however we like with our different animations. So let's maybe zoom in, and let's zoom out down. And that zooms in, I turn it off, and it zooms out. So again, I guess the great thing about this is that we can build these out. We can set up our keyboard shortcuts for them if we want to do that. We can actually group these, so a whole bunch of these can play together or by themselves, which can be really, really cool as well. But yeah, it's really fun, and I think, like, to be honest, for some free software, I don't want to be too critical of the fact that we just have that weird temporary file thing. I don't think that's a deal breaker. It is mildly annoying, and maybe I will reach out and sort of maybe make a recommendation about that. But all we really need to do is just make sure we select our browser source again. And then we've got those ready to go. Okay. And again, Control-Shift-A. So just the ability to have those set up. Yeah, I like that. I think it's good. I'm not being critical. I think it really is really awesome. And again, if we go back into any of these, we'll see that we do have our templates gallery. We can go and actually grab a whole bunch of these for free. There are a few that you might need to pay for. But I really like that, and I think it's a good thing, because I think a lot of people who come from like StreamYard or Restream Studio, those things are built out to do stuff like this really easily. And this is not default functionality in OBS as such. And again, you can create your own text sources, your own image sources, your own movies, which I think is really good. But again, this just makes it a little bit easier. But also you have the duality of, okay, I'm a very simple person. I just want to choose my settings and go from there. Or if you're really nerdy, you can actually literally play with HTML, CSS, JavaScript. You can use these template placeholders, which actually pull from the settings in these other tabs, and that can be really, really awesome as well. All right, so if I press my news button on here, which was working and just doesn't work anymore. So again, I guess that is the other gotcha. I wonder, like, if I import maybe a different template. We'll go back to the neon grade one. Okay. And go apply. And we'll do the news one again. All right, I think it's definitely worth playing with this. I think it's worth checking out. I might think about if I want to actually bring this over to my proper installation of OBS, because I think this can be quite useful. And again, I'm just going to put in my keyboard shortcut, which is the one that we created with the prompter. And I think that's really cool. If I can just animate that on, obviously we can bring in our own images. Again, make sure we deselect one before we go to the other one. That is a bit of a gotcha. And then we can sort of specify a profile picture, sounds, all kinds of stuff. All right, so that's probably all I really wanted to cover today. It's probably going to be a slightly shorter one than usual, but definitely give that a go. If you are concerned about it potentially interfering with your OBS setup, think about running a portable version of OBS. That's a really useful thing to do. But give it a go. Let me know what you think of it. Let me know if you discover any tips or tricks on how we can use this better. I really do like that grouping feature. I think that's really intriguing. So we might have to give that one a go. But thank you so much for joining me today. Have a great week. Have a great weekend when you get there. And I'll talk to you again very, very soon.